Welcome to Boiling Point, the podcast to motivate ever-evolving entrepreneurs and forward-thinking movement pioneers. Our hosts, filmmaker Greg Hemmings and executive coach Dave Vale, are turning up the heat in the world's business communities. Our interviews with entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and movement makers are raising the temperature of inspiration. Live from the hottest studio in this quadrant of the universe, here are Dave and Greg.
Greg, welcome back.
Thank you,
Dave.
Thank you for inviting me to your podcast today, Dave.
I'm happy to be part of your podcast, Greg Hemmings. You want me to start this out, so people are going to be confused because they're going to go, "What's going on?" Usually, Greg kicks things off, but we like to just keep things nimble and. But we got an exciting interview today, and we've got a bunch of prepared questions.
Yes. That is the point.
There's our guest is laughing because he knows that's not true. But we're going to get into that in a second. But Greg, I want to know one thing that's going really well in your life right now.
Yeah, I think everything, like there's a flow happening right now, which is really like nice. On a personal side, taking the sailboat out of the river sucked. And that happened yesterday.
But it's that temperature.
Yeah. I mean, ski season's coming up.
Yeah.
But business-wise, things have been really good, and I feel like I've been hiding the fact, and I don't want to celebrate things going well when so many other people are not doing well, and COVID has really disrupted. But
let me ask you a question on that, because I hear what you're saying. But if things weren't going well for you, would you be happy if I said things are going well for me?
Heck yes.
Right. So,
Yeah, there you go. So, and the other thing, like truly doing this podcast has been really awesome because we were just talking, we've been doing it for probably 7 years, every single week.
Yeah.
Hundreds of incredible entrepreneurs that we've spoken to. And
authors,
usually
astronauts.
usually we're discussing success. And today's guest is absolutely no exception to that. And why don't we pull Ivan in right now? Because Dave, this is kind of your first time to meet my new friend. Ivan, who is an entrepreneur that came from the great country of Ukraine, which I have visited myself a year ago, which feels very New Brunswick, believe it or not. I feel like you're in New Brunswick. But Ivan's been living here for a number of years, building companies and exiting, and now in a very exciting new SaaS space in the veterinarian space.
You were telling me about that. I can't wait to hear more. Ivan, welcome.
Thank you.
New Brunswick from the Ukraine. Explain.
Thank you. Well, I'm not coming directly from Ukraine to New Brunswick. Yeah.
Okay. There's a couple.
Well, you could pretend you were.
Yeah. Oh, I can kick off my Ukrainian accent and start talking like I came yesterday.
Oh, nice.
I'm not gonna do that. Yeah. No. I came like 18 years ago, so that was a long time ago. But I actually went to school on PI. It was short after I came. I went to Atlantic Vet College in UPI.
Okay.
And fell in love with Atlantic Canada and traveled a lot here because it was new country for me and everybody was going on vacations aboard. And I was like, hey, I just moved here. So I really explored New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, loved the area. And I guess it's 12 years later, came back here and settled in New Brunswick. So yeah.
That's we're very happy to hear that. It's fantastic. Now you've gone through a lot, as far as building business here in Canada and selling to a Fortune 500 company, I believe. Let's just get a little bit of your bio. Just share a little bit about your business journey, and then we'll get to what you're working on now.
All right. Well, I can give you sort of a brief story. I'm a veterinarian by trade. Did the first vet school in Ukraine. Typical immigrant story. After coming to Canada, I used that degree to clean hospitals for $8.50 an hour. But I wanted to get into the industry, so that was a way to get into the industry and get to know it. And vet profession in Ukraine is not very fancy profession. All my friends were lawyers and dentists, and I was this guy who sticks his hand up the cow's butt. So when I moved to Canada, it turned out that it's actually a well-respected profession here. So I thought I'll give it a shot. By luck, I think I got into Atlantic Vet College. Vet industry is pretty competitive to get into. And then did the vet degree again. So I think I'm DVM square. And then,
Twice. Ah, that's
yeah.
incredible. Yeah. Okay.
And then when my dream to become a vet in Canada came true, I went to Russia for external experience in surgery, and I found out that they didn't have the diagnostic lab for animals there. So I left Canada and the whole profession, and I went and built the diagnostic lab in Moscow. It was the first full service diagnostic lab, and it was in 2007. And then a year later, came back here. That was a so-so experience. It was learning experience. And then I sort of exited, but I more like ran away from my partners. And then
Is your business that it was a business? It wasn't like you were brought in as a consultant or an employee or something. It was your business.
well, I was the only crazy guy that would go to Russia to build a business out of the founding members, and so they were here, and then they held the competencies of pathology. They knew how to run the diagnostic lab, and then I was the guy who would go and build it there. So the business model was to Moscow is a huge city, and even in that time there was 16 million people, I think.
Wow.
Something crazy. Maybe I'm lying, but it was a huge number, and they didn't have a single lab. So the market opportunity was crazy not to take it. There was a lot of learning because a lot of those tests that we brought in there, they didn't know about. So that was my first experience to bringing something to market that doesn't know that they need it. So we had to educate them too. But yeah, so we built the first diagnostic lab, but the model was to, because we did get funding from PI, the model was to get the samples there and then process them there and then digitalize them and then send them to Canada to Atlantic Vet College, and pathologists would read the samples and then send the results back. And the turnaround was 3 days compared to their 3 weeks in the human hospitals over there. So it's kind of disruptive. In 2007, that was definitely disruptive, but it was a good experience.
Wow. So, and it would be like a license model of some sort was the idea? Like they would...
No, you sign up. So when you go to the vet, they would collect your blood, and sometimes not your, but your pets, hopefully. And then they would send it to either run it in hospital or send it to the big lab. And most of the labs in North America are owned by IDEX. It's actually a company that I exited 2 years ago with a different project. And in Russia, they just didn't have a central lab. So when you bring your pet to the hospital, they may run blood work locally with a questionable quality. But if it's a tumor, they didn't really have a process to diagnose it. They were sending it to human hospital, but that was not their core focus. So it would be probably impossible to even diagnose precisely what it is. So therefore, chemotherapy was sort of sporadic. They didn't know what to use. And so we really brought pathology services to Russia.
That's huge. Even though you say it was a so-so experience, it's kind of neat to look at what the true impact culturally was of that initiative, because now I'm sure it's a norm now, and you were the first one to start that ball rolling.
I didn't invent it. That's the thing. I did a couple things after where it was true innovation, which really inspires me, which I think is something we're working on right now. But that was sort of, you took one model and took it to another geography where it was not there yet. So, I mean, it's really cool. I don't undermine the experience and sort of a little pat on the back there, but it's not like, I just came up with something new. It was just applying the existing business model to a different region.
However, the entrepreneurs who listen to this podcast, they admire your risk taking and grit in saying, "Yep, I'll do it. I'll go to Russia. I'll go to Moscow and set this up." That's huge. Just even though it already existed, to kind of have that courage is massive.
But it's interesting how you distinguish it from what you would call true innovation. So that tells me there's another part of the story I look forward to hearing. But before we go there, though, Ivan. Just something that's curious to me is you said, you talk about the Ukraine and, how vets were viewed compared to probably North America and even Russia being so far behind. Like what culturally, like what's the difference, like, in terms of, just the whole veterinarian field? Like what was an attitude around animals and like what makes North America so different, or Canada maybe?
Well, I think it's many factors, and I don't know if we'll be able to get into all of them. But if you'll think about veterinary medicine, it's sort of a luxury business. It really blossoms in the regions where there's well advanced, middle class. It's not where people don't have anything to eat themselves. They rarely take care of their pets to the degree we do in North America or England or Australia. So that's really the difference. So aside from that, veterinary medicine is never a government supported business. So it is always out of pocket, and unless you have an insurance in place, but still, even that insurance is out of pocket. So not like we're in Canada. Although in emergency hospital in Canada, I remember it was in Barrie, someone took out their health card and put it on the table, and I said, no, that's not how that works. It truly happened. So, but that's the thing, and there's that. So there's economical situation, and as they advance, the 2007 and sort of a 10. Well, before the 2008, maybe early 2000s in Russia were really productive, because after the 90s, there was a bunch of people with tons and tons of money that they stole from everybody else. And eventually they bought all the boats they wanted and all the fur coats. And now they started to invest it into things like this, but they didn't know what to invest into. So it was a great opportunity for new businesses, new ideas to come in, and they were easily funded. Dangerously so, because it was all through like Russian mob. There's stories I have to, from that.
We go in there. Come on, we got to hear one.
All right. Okay. So I had to meet the payroll. So I had the constructions guys that needed to. They were building the lab. Because we started there. It wasn't just, starting doing tests. We needed to build it. We needed to establish the workflows, everything. Yeah. So I opened the bank account in the personal division. And then I thought I'll open the business account in the same bank. So when I'll get the money transferred, it was easier to transfer it to personal and transfer it to the business. So they're sending me here, the partners are sending me $86,000 to pay for the construction for work and everything else. And I'm coming into the bank and I said, I have a personal account in your bank. Can you transfer it to my business account? They said, well, the business branch is downtown and I'm on the outskirts of Moscow. And I said, that's fine. I don't care where they are. Just transfer the money. And they said, no. We mean like you can't transfer from here to there. It's two different banks. And I said, okay, well, how do I do this? They're like, well, we can give you cash. And I said, I'm not walking around Moscow with $86,000 in cash. And that's what we had to do. So basically I'm taking this briefcase with a bunch of cash in Moscow. I'm taking a subway because very easily they can call from the bank and say, I have an idiot coming out with 86 grand here, so pick him up. So I'm taking a subway because there's most cops there, and I'm with the guy who was helping me. He was like a last year student. We go to the bank, but you could exchange money not only at the bank, but at these little exchange kiosks in Moscow. They were all over the place before. So I'm looking at the exchange rate and it's higher than in the bank. And I'm realizing that I'll exchange it into rubles first on the street. Then I'll gain like $1,500 right there. And I'm like, well, I'm doing that. So I'm going downstairs into this lobby of this sketchy apartment building, and they have a bulletproof door with a little window. And I'm buzzing this thing. And I said, can I exchange $86,000? She said, just a minute. Left for like 2 minutes, which was the longest 2 minutes in my life. And she said, sure. And then I'm starting to pass on the stacks of money into it without knowing what's going to happen. Anyway, the rubles were coming out. Now I have a duffel bag of these rubles, and I went to the bank to deposit it. Anyway, that's just one of these things that I had to do.
But it worked. Oh,
it did.
And how? Yeah, you were crapping yourself at that point.
It's like, we have, in a way, you have so little appreciation for some of the things that we would just take for granted at this stage of like in 2020.
Yeah,
probably in Canada, like I even get frustrated when I try to do a check deposit with my phone, and sometimes it won't read it properly, or it says the wrong fund, and you're like, oh my god, like this is like rubles of duffel bag going across the city. Holy
cow, true, man.
Oh, man.
Okay, so your experience in Moscow ended, then you came back, and when you came back, did you jump into to vet integration service, or was there another?
No. I went back to do what I wanted to do, to work as an emergency veterinarian. So I worked across Canada, and I worked as an I worked in emergencies, and it usually takes about usually the shifts are like you work 4 and then you're resting 6. And that was the goal, to meet the lifestyle. And then instead, being a workaholic, I worked 4 and then I took 6 more shifts doing locum, like relief work all over the place. And it was a good gig because when you take relief work, you switch into clinics, different culture. You don't like someone, you never come back, and you choose where you want to work. Ideally, if you don't want to burn out like I did, you want to take time off, but I was just feeding it with as much work as I could do. But it was a good experience. So I did about 10 years of that emergency and relief work and worked as a vet until I came up with a SmartFlow idea. That's the previous company that I sold. And I realized that there was kind of it's not really I came up with an improvement for the industry. I was lazy, and I was too lazy to go from the doctor's area where you write your notes to the treatment area and every time check on the temperature and the blood pressure and everything of the patients, because they have these treatment sheets that are hanging on the cages. I don't know if you've been to the vet hospital, or in the past times on your bed in the hospital, you would have this clipboard with doctor's orders. So that's what we had. And I thought if I could look at that sitting in my office without getting up, that would be awesome. So that was the innovation. So the iPads came around, and I thought it would be cool if instead of clipboards, people could walk around with the iPad and do treatments on them. But I at the same time could see it in the central office and change, treatment protocols and stuff like that. So we did that, and that integrated with their payment system. And then as you do the injection, it will charge for it. So that was sort of the thing that we came up with. And in 6 years, it spread to about 600 hospitals globally. We had them in Australia, New Zealand, England, France, Russia. I did one in South Africa. That was another scary experience. So I got to travel all over the world doing still vet thing, but then applying more sort of innovation and kind of combining the two, which was it was an awesome ride. And we sold that 2 years ago to IDEX, which is the biggest technology company.
Wow.
In that space.
But you know what? And you say too lazy. I doubt you don't sound, you don't think at all lazy. But isn't that, it's funny though, how many years would they've been doing this, putting these charts on the cages, and just take someone who claims to be lazy, but just sees an opportunity. That's very cool. So, and how much do you have a technology background, or do you have?
None. No. It was luck. It was a combination of luck. Okay, I wasn't lazy. I was frustrated. Someone said that. I don't remember who said that innovation comes from frustration. And I truly believe in that. Someone is frustrated with the process and they go to change it.
Right? You mean frustration where it's like, this is inefficient. This is waste of time. This doesn't make sense. This could be so much easier.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And most people take it for granted. It's like, it's this way because we used to do it this way. I went on analyzing the processes in multiple hospitals, and I literally was like time tracking things. When it got to like a bit of a science, the whole project and the software, and we gained efficiencies from the hospital. It became a workflow optimization system. That's what we coined as a term. And we made the first workflow optimization system in the veterinary domain. I think so, but I can say that nobody else is here. So, but yeah, so I lost my thought.
Well, I'm actually going to add, I think I know we're going to jump into the next thing in a second, but you're working on currently, but I was thinking there's probably a really other big opportunity for optimization, and that would be in the banking system in Russia. I think you could go back. And I think you can tell them how to transfer money between, I'm sure they do it now, but
it could be a subset of Uber Eats. It could be Uber Money. And then as they deliver someone, they can grab a bag of money and bring it to downtown. With
armed guards and, cars.
Look at all the ideas we come up with on a podcast.
I know.
I was thinking about it is, I think a lot of people get frustrated and maybe think things doesn't work, but who's going to actually take the time and do what you did and, actually create a business out of it? And there's a whole bunch probably of good questions there. Like you can tell Greg and I really appreciate when we hear about people doing creative things and finding a way to monetize it and then exit and all that kind of stuff. Did you have a business background?
No. And I felt it pretty quickly because there was two. So I came up with this idea and I was trying to find whether I can put Excel sheet on the iPad. And in those days you couldn't because there was no Office on the iPads. And I was just looking for the way to digitalize this thing. And then again, by it's pure luck, a buddy of mine, a high school classmate actually from Ukraine, reached out and we were chatting about something. And I said, I heard you have something to do with the computers. And I explained the concept to him and he said, well, that's kind of cool. I can build that. And I was like, okay, well, why don't you come to Canada and we'll do that? And he said, yeah, it's going to take us about 2 weeks. He literally said that. So every feature for the next 6 years, whenever we came out with something, we were like, what's an estimate on that? 2 weeks? Because it was, I don't know why he said that. I think he just wanted to come and visit. But he was a coder, so it was truly a startup. I think that it's a cool way to think about it. And remember, he came. We didn't have much money. I think that the first $6,000 that we pulled together, 3 him, 3 me, we spent on the patent application, which failed. So that was the $6,000 that we had. And then after that, he started coding, and we basically became like a couple. So I was married, but my wife at that time was in Russia. So we were 2 dudes living in my bachelor apartment in Etobicoke, and he was coding and I was taking it to all the hospitals that I worked in as a prototype, annoying all the technicians and veterinarians with this until they were frustrated. And but I kept going to new hospitals with my gig of doing the relief work. So I was testing it on the market and eventually just starting, getting traction. And people liked it, and then it grew to a real thing.
Wow, it's a real it's a true entrepreneur's journey. What you're outlining, and it proves the point that you don't need to go to business school to do this. It's if you've got a little courage, a little bit of risk taking abilities, and a vision or a frustration. It's like,
but I think. I think I maybe should correct you there that I realized that it would be nice if I did go to business school, because as soon as we started making it, and then I started doing marketing, and I had this mini fight with my partner, Pavel. And I said, okay, well, I know you're coding, but I'm a veterinarian, so who should be doing marketing? And he's like, well, I'm coding. And I said, well, okay, well, how do I know how to do marketing? And he said one thing that I can't forgive him for. He said, well, how do people learn things? And I said, they read the book. He's like, yeah, go read a book. So I was like, thanks, friend. But I ended up actually in the last 2 years when it was really hard and he burned out. On top of everything, I started my MBA. So I started because I realized I have a bunch of collected knowledge. I read all Seth Godin's books, which I saw and heard on your podcast, which is awesome. He's like my, I love him.
That. Yeah, and Ivan as well.
Yeah, I took his mini MBA course, and I just love the guy, and I'm signed up to his blog and everything. But yeah, so I ended up at the end of it, I realized that I have the random knowledge from blog posts, books, and this and that, but it's not collective. So I ended up doing a business degree. I did an MBA in healthcare management that I just finished. But what was awesome in that is that it was the hardest thing I'd probably done during this. I started waking up at 4 a.m. and studying from 4 to 8 and then starting to work. And but every homework was, imagine if you're a CEO of a startup or of a company, and then your homework is to actually apply it to real life. So I converted last 2 years of the company, structured it so when we sold, it really paid for what we've done. And we structured it, and the merger almost felt like not they consumed us, but they consumed us with the processes transferred. That type of acquisition where they bought us for the processes and acqui-hire. So it was really interesting.
Which increases the value significantly, I would think.
It did overnight. It actually did, because I knew the price that they were giving us the night before. And then in the morning, it was 40% more than they expected to pay because of my conversation with the CEO. So it actually did.
Right on. Yeah.
That's a huge lesson right there.
You hear a lot. Frank, I was gonna ask you a question about I was just thinking about, like, I really appreciate what you're saying about the MBA and the application. And like I run into I do some workshops and stuff at some of the universities, and the kids, younger people, like students, I should say, young adults will be asking about, jumping into an MBA. And I don't have an MBA, but my thing is like, I think it'd be a lot more valuable to get a little experience and then go through your MBA, then versus coming out with an MBA when you're 25 years old and no practical experience. Like I just, to me, there's like, or to your point, actually having a real living lab where you're actually applying what you're learning. Like the learning must have been exponential.
Yeah, and it's, I can compare it to my experience going through the vet school second time, which I don't recommend anybody doing 2 vet schools. But when I was going through it second time, not that I knew everything from Russia, because they treat different animals, and we prepared for the nuclear war with the Americans. But the learning experience that I had is that I could now understand where this knowledge would apply in practice. And it's also, when you're learning anatomy and it's a bunch of terms not related to anything, it's much harder than the surgery that you're learning and then you're applying it to practice. So during the whole second vet school, I worked in the emergency department overnights while studying. All the knowledge could be directly applied, and that was very helpful rather than just taking it out of the book. So you're absolutely right. I think that if you have the business to apply it to, then that would be interesting. But otherwise, I think it's very disconnected.
It's conceptual, and it's like I'm an executive coach. The course I went through is a university course, a graduate course, but it was taught by practitioners. And the whole time you have to be in the market practicing the skills. And to me, it was just massive, because you can understand the theory, but you actually have to apply it. And it's like, for me, it was awesome. And not to say that it's not good to learn and to understand things conceptually, but I can see why. It's just an interesting path to success there for sure. So now how do we get back to New Brunswick? Like, how did we get here?
So we got offered that, to be acquired by this company, and they're in the States, and they're in Portland, Maine. And they wanted me, because after they acquired the company, they put me in charge of their software division, which is, again, another nice pat on the back, because instead of running one company as a startup, all of a sudden I'm running 14 products and the biggest software company in the veterinary domain. So I was a GM of that. But they wanted me to move there. They wanted me to move to Portland. And I said, hell no, I'm not going to States for many reasons. I love a lot of people in America, but there's more reasons now not to be in there. And then I started looking, I live in Brantford in Ontario, and then I was looking for the closest point to Portland so I can drive there once a month. And it was either Sherbrooke, I think, in Quebec, is pretty close to what St. John is to Portland. So, and I ended up finding this very nice place in Drury Cove here in St. John. And then we moved here. So I've done that for 9 months. And then I said, I can't do corporate. And I left the company. So
and now you're here, and you fell in love with Drury Cove and everything.
Hey,
offer.
Do you know, before we jump into that, but I was just thinking, I find St. John and Portland to be very similar cities.
Very similar cities.
Yeah.
I mean,
they look quite the same.
Yeah, like the cobblestone brick and all
the architecture, the port. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, Ivan, you're saying something there?
No. I just said that, I'm here. But then again, after we did that, I started this new gig that we're doing now. And last year I was in Ukraine for 2 weeks, starting new team, because we do development in Ukraine. It's, it makes sense economically. The talent is awesome, and I speak the language. And then I told my wife how awesome it is in Ukraine now, because there was so much turmoil and change. And all of a sudden she says, oh, why don't we go to Ukraine, and our son will learn a little bit of Russian or Ukrainian. So we just packed our bags and left, leaving everything in New Brunswick. And then the COVID, and then we got stuck there for 11 months. So
interesting. When Drew first connected with us, remember Drew was one of our guests a long time ago. Yeah. I did a video call with Drew and one of your other collaborators in your house. Like I wasn't in.
Yeah. He lived in my house. Yeah.
So that's probably when you were still in Ukraine at that point.
Yeah. He's the CEO, Sean. He's the CEO of one of the companies that I consult and invest in.
Yeah. So it's really neat. So now you're back, and let's talk about VIS and what you guys are building now.
So I think a lot of classmates ask me, and I see it a lot in the industry now. People don't hold these jobs for life. I think it's the generation. I think it's the way we consume information. There's so many factors. The way we, consume information through digital. I don't think we can hold a career for the entire life. And the veterinarian, as in the past, James Harriet and the books, and then the guy was a vet and died as a vet. And the lawyers and the doctors. I don't think that people will hold these professions anymore for longer than 10 years. It's just my sort of a view on this. And a lot of people ask me, how do you get out of the vet space? And I'm not saying that I'm getting out of the vet space, but I'm adding more pieces, and then I'm applying what I've learned in the past or made mistakes in the past, and kind of trying to look forward what's new out there. So this current gig wasn't, it was sort of a product of that. I had now the skill of building a company, and now finishing my, my thesis and dissertation on management of corporate or health organizations, and then all the vet experience in the past. And then I realized that there's a consolidation that's happening in the industry, very rapid. So clinics are being acquired and big enterprise formed with 50, 100, thousands of hospitals. And it seems like there's a gap of how they manage them using the data. And the second piece is that along the way through the acquisition of the hospital, people burn out. And our industry is known for a high suicide rate. We actually surpassed dentists 3 years ago, I think. And it's a huge problem without it. But then when people are going through acquisition of the hospital, they leave the practice much faster than they would if that was their practice. And I kind of started thinking, can I connect the business with veterinarians' experience? Because I admire people that do veterinary medicine. I did my part, and I like animals. I just don't want to do the vet thing anymore. But I would love to help people that do that. And so I'm trying to combine in this new startup the application of large-scale management methodologies to these consolidators to improve veterinary experience as they work as a veterinarian. That's sort of. I
love how the niche demographic or target market is consolidators, because there's probably not a ton of them out there, right?
No, and that was also a learning experience, because if you try to sell to the vets in North America, you'll have to sell to about 32,000 vets. If you want to sell to consolidators, you need to convince 60 of them. You also can only screw up only 60 times and you have no market. So you really need to.
But you've got a very high touch opportunity to really build relationships with your potential buyers, because there's only 60 of them.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's really exciting. I think it's not easy, but in a way it's you can grasp it. You can grasp trying to get 60 clients, if the market is 60 wide. That's really cool. And how's it going so far? How's it being received?
Well, because we're doing it in a sort of an interesting way. We're funding it from the proceeds from the previous engagements. We're also funding it through consultancy. So basically, it's a consultancy on the executive level, and we've been able to almost break even, and we have 20 people now and robust development team in Ukraine. And we were almost breaking even this year just on consultancy. But along the way, that is also our customer discovery process. So through this consultancy, applying our knowledge, we then get the feedback and lock it into software. So eventually, we kind of want to coin ourselves as maybe a McKinsey of veterinary industry, but with a product, because McKinsey's product is a PowerPoint presentation. Hopefully none of them are listening to this, but and we're hoping that aside from sort of gap analysis and instructions, we can say, and this is how you apply them, and here's the muscle memory in the form of a SaaS software.
Nice.
Incredible.
And then, have you at the place where you piloted this? Is this like the software itself? Is it in the market? Are people using it?
No, so the MVP will be coming out this January, but we went. I've done sort of 3-4 engagements where I had to educate the market, and just like starting with Russia. And I think that the big portion here is what we're proposing is will require a lot of learning. So we're starting actually with an interesting go-to-market strategy. We're building a university or a college, if you will. We call it an internal university. I don't know what the name is going to be, on the blueprint on how to build consolidation in any domain. We're actually taking on the task of creating the blueprint and the textbook on how to build consolidation. And then we've built a maturity model where you can grade your business where you at. And then we would do a gap analysis of how to get to the next level. And then from that, you arrive to sort of our software as a solution to it. But instead of building the software and then having an onboarding process, which some people go through, some not, we're going with the route of training on how to build the business. And then the software becomes sort of this tool that you use just to do it, which becomes sort of, you have to have it instead of the other way around.
And where did you come up with the model? Like, was that just something, did you see it somewhere else, or is that just through learning?
So yeah, it's a collective of multiple things. I don't know if you guys heard about SAFe, Scaled Agile framework. It's in the large tech industry, they use that. So I've been sort of, I've been fascinated with that for a while. So I went through training in SAFe, and then I did a bunch of Kanban training, and they had a maturity model. So, and I met a lot of consultants that also do sort of transformations of the company or companies. And it was interesting how they applied different methodologies to transform a certain business. So what I've done, I collected sort of a lot of experience that I've had through that, but to one niche. And I think it will become easier because more or less you can template it instead of every time apply transformation to a different domain. So I think we can lock it also into a methodology that is quite typical. It's not every time different experience. And that's why we think that we can create a blueprint. So it's a collective of sort of stuff from MBA, stuff from IDEX where I worked. And it was a massive organization, 7,500 people, where they really needed transformation. So it's kind of seeing good and bad and the ways to transform, and then applying it back to where I'm comfortable. But we want to go beyond. Vet is for us as a sort of test bed, and then we want to go into dentistry, physiotherapy, and others, because consolidating businesses is almost the same across. The problems are the same. It's just that the terms, the roles, and the data names are different, but the framework is the same.
And I think that is your scaling opportunity. It's like you already understand the vet space, so why not test it out there and get a handle on it? And then, like I said, I'm thinking about Dr. Eric Klein, one of our friends here, who has a chiropractic company, and he's really going hard on franchising, which it's not necessarily consolidation, but it's very similar in the need to make sure everybody's operating on the same page and data is being shared appropriately with the
similar business model. They do the same thing. They optimize the back end, and then the front end is just you show up to work, do your thing, and then the back end is optimized through franchise. Yeah, similar model.
And I think it appreciates that most people getting into dentistry or, if they're a veterinarian or whatever, are usually excited about the practice, but not necessarily have knowledge of how to grow the business. And
that's the problem, because you have an amazing vet that wants to become a business owner, and then you lose an amazing vet and you get a really terrible business owner. That's the outcome. So yeah.
You see, and it's so interesting though, but it seems like such a flawed model that applies to the kind of that helping professions, if you will, because Eric was saying about it was chiropractic schools, and
they're not teaching it, right?
Well, they're teaching the art of how to be the practitioner, but and then they're going, then you flail in the marketplace, right? Because you make bad. I mean, we learn that, kind of no real no, there's no kind of map to your film making company or a coaching company, and it's challenging. And you could take that learning. We have collectively had over like the last 15 years. Man, you'd be so much farther ahead. So that's 100%. Cool. That's cool, Ivan. So what are you enjoying most about this experience? I guess like this is your third company. Is that right?
Yep. Third company. I'm enjoying my newborn daughter and fishing in St. John. And I think this is the first time where I can parse and do both. And I've burned out too many times, and I had to struggle through it couple. So I think that's what I'm enjoying the most out of this work. Amen.
We're both dads to relatively new humans as well.
Yes.
And it's
congrats, guys.
Yeah. And it's, we've talked about this before COVID. One of the benefits is I'm not on airplanes every couple of weeks like I used to be, so I'm around. It's it's been nice.
Yeah, and you don't have to cross the border anymore to go down to Maine. So that was
no, it's it's our second child, and I've been around it. I always joke that it takes the pandemic to keep me at home with my family. So
I think that's a lot of people, and I think there's a lot of appreciation for it too.
Yeah, everybody, but the whole world gets it. No, there's no pressure from external source. Well, Ivan, next time we get together, I hope the three of us in a COVID-friendly way can get together socially now that we're all in the same city. And,
we're in the bubble. We can get socially. So it's I'm not visiting. It's funny because you have guests from all over the world, and the closest one to you is doing a remote. So I apologize, guys. It's just so back to back. But I think we should connect.
Thanks for sharing your story. It's inspiring, Ivan, and we're excited to get to know you more. And glad you made St. John your home.
Great, thank you.
And next time I want to ask you about the New Brunswick experience, like the New Brunswick entrepreneurial experience, because I'm curious to hear your perspective. So that's maybe a second.
Well, I'm looking forward to expand here and meet more people, because I do want to promote that here. I mean, there's so much opportunity, and there's not very many people that want to work too much, but there's a lot of people that want to come here and work a lot. So that's sort of my next vision.
I think that was a loaded statement. Exciting. Exciting what you just said right
That's
there.
a teaser.
That's a teaser. That's good.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much, Ivan.
Thank you.
Take care.
Yeah, thanks. Nice meeting you.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Boiling Point. Remember to rate and subscribe to us on iTunes and follow us on Twitter at Boiling Point Pod. To see more from Dave Vale, check out leadershipunleashed.ca or visioncoachinginc.com, and on Twitter at Dave_Vale. And to catch up with Greg, visit hemmingshouse.com and at Greg Hemmings on Twitter. Thanks for listening, and remember, keep that pot boiling.